would love to have Rohit introduce himself. Super thrilled to have an audience that's global, so we'll have a global context in the conversations ahead.
I'm Rohit Chauhan. I lead AI for MasterCard. I've been with MasterCard for the last 15 years. It almost feels as if I'm still a rookie at MasterCard, but 15 years have just flown by so quickly. 12 of these 15 years, I was leading data and analytics for MasterCard. And then 3 years ago, the next click of that journey, I'm leading AI. And MasterCard is very ambitious about its plans to leverage AI. They want AI to sort of ingrain into the fabric of MasterCard. And that's the remit that I'm kind of responsible for. So super excited to be on this conference.
Thanks, Rohit. Let's start with what are the most common, the basic stuff. What are the most common, largest applications for AI at MasterCard?
So, Shri, I think as one would expect, the longest and the largest application of AI within MasterCard is fraud detection. And this application has been there for at least 10 plus years, if not longer. And I think to understand like why AI, why this particular use case is so critical and important, not just to MasterCard, but also to the entire finance industry and beyond, is that fraud in this particular space is like an asymmetric game. So you have fraudsters, and then you have institutions like MasterCard. And it's asymmetric because the fraudsters are only doing offense. And companies like MasterCard is only doing defense. We can do offense to fraudsters, and fraudsters are only, they have no issues doing offense. The marginal cost of the fraudsters to make additional fraud attacks is zero. They can be sitting in their basement all day long, shooting out fraudulent transactions. For them to win, they can throw out 1 million transactions. For them to win, they just need one transaction to get through, and they win the game. And for MasterCard and other financial institutions, even if we save 1 million transactions and let one transaction get through, we lose. And that makes this game really, really interesting and really hard. And what becomes even harder is that just to avoid that one transaction to slip through, we end up flagging transactions that are not actually a true transaction, but we may erroneously flag them as high risk. And some innocent consumers like us will actually suffer because it may just get declined, saying that it's high risk when they're truly just legitimate kosher transactions. But just so that we catch that one, a lot of us suffer from that. So it's very interesting. We have AI to sort of fight this battle, but fraudsters also have AI to make their fraudulent kind of schemes even as intelligent. So it's almost like it's like a cat and mouse game, and we always have to stay ahead, and we have to learn as frauds are trending from one region to the other. We have to keep constantly learning and making our strategies more, keep refining our strategies to stay ahead. But it's something that keeps us up at night. It's something that we constantly work on 24/7, and we leverage as many tools as there are out there so that we don't fall behind.
It's both asymmetric warfare, but also very highly intelligent, continuous combative measures you have to take. Why doesn't traditional rule engines that historically dominated the space and data from the past, why doesn't that kind of keep up with the rate at which things are changing? How are our methods and measures now differing from the ones before?
That's a really good question. And the question is that like AI and any tools that you may deploy or that you may use are just enablers. So you have a strategy, and then you bring your strategy to life using the tools that you have. In the past, the tools that were available were somewhat limited with regards to what all you can do, with regards to how many data sets that you can actually leverage and so on and so forth. And as the new tools are kind of becoming more and more mainstream, we are able to implement much robust and much stronger strategies than what we could ever implement in the past. So if you continue to use, legacy logistic regressions and so on and so forth, I'm sure you'll do a good job, but not as good of a job that you really need to implement so that you can stay ahead of the fraudsters. So it is imperative that if there is even one additional tool out there that is available, you have to have it and you have to be using it, because when the loss rate, when the fraud rate is 0.1%, and number of transactions that we deal with are like literally some days on a good day, we might even see over 1 billion transactions that we'll score. Every fraudulent transaction that gets through counts. So we just can't afford not to stay ahead and not to keep like getting access to every possible tool set that we can get our hands on so that we can implement the most robust strategy so that we can protect the ecosystem and protect consumers, which is utmost important to us.
That's great to hear. Is billion transactions a day? That's both speed and scale and globalness of this. Audience might be keen on trying to understand what kind of thinking, agility, and architecture is usually kind of needed to deploy in such a scenario.
So that's a really good question, Ari. Actually, like there is certain amount of latency, that is expected when you swipe the transaction. But I think people sit there and swipe, and instantly they get the response that the transaction is approved, declined, or whatever the case might be. And at our end, we get just about 30 to 40 milliseconds to make the determination. So literally, that is the slice of the latency that has been allocated to us. So as we are kind of building the algorithms, we are not only just building the most robust algorithm that we can actually build and deploy, but we have to build an algorithm that can actually work in this 30 millisecond window that we have available. And that itself needs a whole lot of different kind of optimization, because if we had all the time in the world, we probably could go after that 0.1% of fraud that actually gets through. But those algorithms will take forever to sort of to come up with the response, which obviously would not be feasible for us to implement. So that becomes like really, really challenging. And as I mentioned, billion transactions all scored within the time frame, and yet trying to maintain a loss rate or reduce a fraud rate to less than 0.1% is not an easy task.
Very fascinating. Thank you for giving us the ringside view of this intense daily, every second, every millisecond that counts. And we are thrilled to be part of that journey with you and amongst many other tool chain that you're deploying, which to us is quite privileged to be a partner in that essential fight. Just zooming out a little more to the use cases, how do you prioritize use cases? Which ones should a big institution, large institution like MasterCard has history of doing data and AI and working closely with analytics for your customers? How do you prioritize these use cases? Which ones to focus on? And can you talk a little bit about how do you go about finding successful use cases? And everything looks very shiny when you have data and AI. So how does our audience learn from your experiences?
So Shri, if we truly believe, and I am like, a true believer in this, that AI is the next electricity. And it actually has the potential of actually changing, the entire ecosystem. It's a big step change. Just the way internet, when it got fully penetrated, it changed everything. I mean, just think about it. This conference call we're having virtually is actually enabled by just the technology. Likewise, AI has the potential of making very, very wide and deep changes to the entire ecosystem, business challenges, everything AI is going to make its way through. So right now, whenever we are kind of building a new technology, we're building a new solution or product and so on and so forth, do we ever think um, doing a business case to figure out if we're using internet at all or not? We don't, because it's just table stake. We have that. Likewise, AI is going to become table stake for every potential problem that we actually would address. So I'm not a very strong kind of advocate of doing business cases for every AI use case that comes to the table. And part of my remit is to deploy AI in the fabric of MasterCard. And we have like literally hundreds of use cases that has surfaced from all the different divisions within MasterCard, from legal, compliance, finance, HR, technology, you name it. And we have addressed those use cases. And one thing that we always kind of focus on is that rather than going out and taking moonshots and trying to build the next self-driving car, our goal is to figure out how we can take use cases that are more generic use cases that people kind of deal with in and day out their work processes, figure out how AI can do those small sliver of tasks much efficiently, and figure out how they can be deployed. I think the deployability is a very, very important aspect. We always want to address those use cases that can be deployed, but then we never actually ever look at it to figure out that is there enough return and all that, because this is going to be a journey. We don't figure out, should we buy this device or not buy the device based on the fact that we have electricity. Electricity is everywhere. Everything is going to use electricity. Likewise, every process is going to use AI. It's a matter of time when exactly they get on. And if an opportunity kind of poses itself, then it is a right opportunity. So it's a long-winded answer, but every use case should be addressed, and we should not be just looking for moonshots where we try to build the next self-driving car or do things that we have never been able to get done without this technology. We should also focus on all the things that are critical to running an engine, running a company like MasterCard, running any organizations of all the people that are that have called in. If there are things that are critical to keeping your company going, then that task is prime to be a use case where AI should be deployed.
You're saying all use cases are game, and then you just need to reduce the cost of doing them or democratize them so much so that there's no reason not to deploy AI in any use case or any business case, and then start working your way through what's core and what's at the periphery.
Yeah. So if I paraphrase that, any technology that becomes mainstream does three things for us. First of all, it drives efficiency into the ecosystem. It makes things much more efficient. It allows technology to do repetitive tasks and so on and so forth. So that's one kind of key benefit. The second benefit is that it allows products to improve consumer experience. Just look at all the voice activated devices that we have available and all that. It just makes our life so much simpler. I can ask, my home speaker says, I'm boiling my egg, and says, give me an alert in 10 minutes, and I don't have to sit there and do anything. And then while I'm working, in the house, and it'll just tell me that, it's now just turn off the gas, or whatever the case might be. It improves consumer experience a whole lot. And I expect AI to do that. And the third thing technology does is that it opens up new businesses, new business models that just get, couldn't evolve without this technology. Just look at the last kind of wave, and that last wave was driven by internet. And you look at companies like Uber, you look at companies like Airbnb. Those things, those business models evolved just because of the connectivity that internet could provide, which they were able to sort of harness and build and bring a business model to life. And AI is going to do the same thing. So it is not just for new things, it is also to figure out how you can improve the consumer experience of existing products, and also to figure out how you can make existing processes much more efficient, and so that the company can benefit from that.
At the end of the day, I mean, technology optimizes business processes, right? So this definitely get orders of magnitude amplification for that with AI. How are companies taking data science and AI deeper into the organization? Just touching on the culture aspects of how AI is being adopted at MasterCard, and your customers, which are also our customers, the big banks. You probably see this day in, day out as you go take the benefits of the tech to the customers. What are kind of what does the landscape look like? What are your thoughts on how to kind of get the rest of the organization up to speed on what machine learning can do, and how to get the domain experts to participate closely with AI?
So Shri, I'll give you an analogy, and it's kind of like a scary analogy because you might be able to date me. So which obviously I don't want anybody to do that. But like, long time ago, when spreadsheets were introduced and became mainstream in the banking community, I still remember there were like 6 members within the finance division at a bank, and they were the spreadsheet expert, and everybody looked at them with like, and saw them like, wow, these are like really techy things, they're really complex things that they're dealing with and they're working on. And right now, we don't even think spreadsheet is like second nature. We just pop open a spreadsheet. Even kids pop open spreadsheets. But 30 years ago, it was high tech. It was like you had to be like a tech junkie to be using spreadsheets. I guarantee you that even though it may be hard for us to sort of to digest this, AI is going to become as mainstream as office productivity tools such as spreadsheets and word processing and so on and so forth. It is just a matter of time. And even though there is this huge fear that this is it's going to take away jobs, or this is only designed for techies and so on and so forth, all of those I truly do not believe. Just the way right now, or like 30 years ago, people say these are people who are keyboard shy. So these are people who just don't like to get on a computer because they feel that their inability to navigate a computer is going to make them look ignorant or whatever. I think right now people are AI shy, which is going to eventually go away. So what exactly are we doing at MasterCard? And at MasterCard, I mean, I think all of the people that are kind of logged on and so on and so forth, we all realize and know that there is a huge gap in the number of people that you can hire that can do AI right now. And there's shortage, and there's always attrition, finding people, and so on and so forth. And the challenge exists, and I'm the first one to recognize that. But the places where we are focusing on is that we are orchestrating large-scale training programs, because we truly believe that a number of people can actually pick up these skills and start using it and become AI savvy. And at MasterCard, we run a program called AI by Default. And it is a program that we kind of launch company-wide and ask people to sort of, volunteer and participate. And it's a challenge where we may give online training on a whole bunch of tools and let people who are not programmers to start learning AI tools. And this is not content that we are creating. There's enough training content that exists on the internet. We're just curating a set of content, training things, and say that step one, take this, step two, take this, step three, take this. And if you do this, then do this particular exercise, and you'll be able to bring all these things that you just learned into life. And then at the end, we give them a challenge that why don't you go out and build something with what you have learned in a use case that may be totally linked to the work that you do, or it may be totally something that is aspirational. And in the process, we have trained literally thousands of people on AI tools. And it's so encouraging to see people who have actually had no programming knowledge have learned Python, have created AI program, and feel so much more sort of energized to see how they can take part in the next industrial revolution that would be driven by AI. So I think it is a responsibility of the companies to retrain people. We should not just rely on just looking for people who are already AI savvy, but it is part of our responsibility to make sure that we train existing staff. And I think companies like yours, other companies have made tool sets that are so easy and so intuitive to use that just giving them like a 45-minute training session and introducing them to some of the tools like H2O.ai, give them the strength and the confidence that now they can take a use case that they were trying to work on spreadsheet, use much more sophisticated tools. And I truly believe that at one point of time it'll just become transparent, and companies like H2O and other companies that are producing these tools that are becoming much more user and consumer friendly will play a very pivotal role in making AI as part of just the next productivity tool that every employee in every company would be using.
Thank you for the kind words. And I think democratizing AI is a core mission for us. Back when ML was very difficult to kind of even use to even find good algorithms that run at scale, both at and speed, to now when it's much more easier to just build models and deploy them and take them to production and use AI clouds to just build simple applications. I think the end-to-end, where you can use some kind of simple framework to present the story behind the machine learning and what the data is telling. I think all of that end-to-end tool chain that we can now find relatively easily, including H2O tool chain, obviously, and the workflows from there. I think I totally agree with the mission that a KPI for AI-first companies is going to be how many of their team members are well-versed, literate in machine learning, literate in data, and the ability to kind of perceive what's the difference between bias and perceive what is a confusion matrix, right? Try to kind of upskill. To some level, the business users need to learn a little bit more of how machine learning can play tricks with them, and vice versa. The popular adage that all models are wrong, some models are useful, needs to become general knowledge for most of the organization. And I think in the early days of the AI projects in some of our peers, most of them had a KPI on how to kind of how many of their team members, how many of the companies are using in the company are using AI. And I think that's literally going to become the same kind of motion across most of our customers. And we know MasterCard is really further along on that. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Shri, I'm going to just make two comments based on what you just said. Number one is that all of us understand and realize that we are now, people have been talking about the data economy, but I think the game, the light of, game on light is just about to get on. I mean, in the past, there were only, 6 or 8 digital giants that were playing in the data economy. But now the data economy is going to be for everyone. And it will be how quickly can you mine the data? How quickly can you make key decisions that are based, that are driven by data, is going to differentiate which companies get ahead, which companies survive, because that would become the most pressing competitive advantage a company would be able to hang on to. The journey of data economy is going to be, how successful you are is going to be driven by how soon, how early, how quickly did you start on that particular journey. Because it is a journey, and you have to, it will take you before you can fire up all the 6 cylinders in your car to be able to leverage. And the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be. And the sooner the longer you wait, the longer you would fall behind. I mean, look at the giants that exist right now. It was like winner takes all, but not sure if that is going to be, what is going to be in the future, because people who have good data, people who have, all the right tool set, people who made investment early on their journey are definitely going to benefit. So that's number one. The second thing that I do want to bring up is that, you spoke about the use cases, and and one really interesting kind of byproduct that we observed when we started deploying AI in some use cases which were really small and and trivial and so on and so forth, is that it also played a role in educating people what AI can do. So when we would talk to people and we deploy AI, which may not be like the most sexiest application of AI, but it allowed people to understand and get comfortable with AI, because right now people fear AI. So that was number one. It became a really good educational kind of projects. But but another really big kind of byproduct that came out of that was that every time we deployed one AI project, it spawned 10 new projects from the same division, because suddenly it opened eyes for them. I think we can do the following 3 things with this as well. And another person says, you know what, I think there are another like 8 things that we can potentially do, because we are doing this day in and day out. And can somebody go through all, the 3,000 PDFs that are sitting within our legal division, and we're looking for this particular, how many contracts have this particular clause in it and all that, which is so manually laborious, suddenly just became, could get done in a heartbeat. And so deploying small use cases should be seen as long-term investments and would give back really, really good returns in the long run.
Yeah, that's very well said. The boring use cases, the laborious ones, where we can free up human ingenuity to focus on the creative side, right? So this is very well said. And I think that time is the only non-renewable resource, right? And every epoch, as we know these days, with the rate at which change is coming at us, the sooner the companies or teams organizations embrace technology like AI or machine learning and data, the faster they get good at it. Once they get good at it, they're just become commensurate with anyone else, however large they may be or small. Let me turn that train of thought to obviously all of us, and there's some really great questions in the audience, so get to them soon. One team that we are here on a Zoom on a Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon for you, morning for us in California, and late night for hundreds of different folks who have joined from across the world on the Zoom call because of COVID. COVID has absolutely delivered a real shock to the system, to all models, right? It's a whole new regime for doing business. How has your practice changed within Mastercard, and how are you serving are using AI to kind of enable yourself to be further ahead? In my view, it has actually accelerated the event horizon for innovation. I would love to hear your thoughts on how COVID has made you adapt here.
Sure. So, Shri, let me kind of piggyback on a use case that I spoke about, so that you understand exactly how COVID kind of, you said shock the ecosystem, but it sends ripples into every possible aspects of our life and working life. So when transactions are flowing through our network, transactions are kind of categorized in two big buckets. One is card present. So you are actually physically in a store holding your card and you're swiping it. And those are card present transactions. And then card not present transactions, where you may be actually making an e-commerce transaction sitting in your home, or whatever the case might be. As you would expect, that the amount of fraud that happens on card present is less than the amount of fraud that you would expect in card not present, because fraudsters won't just create plastic with fake, with stolen credit card IDs and then kind of swiping it or doing whatever the case might be. It is easier for them to sit in the basement and actually send out fraudulent transactions over, an accepting device which is simulated in the basement. When COVID hit, there was the amount of the acceleration of card not present transaction just rocketed. The kind of penetration that we would see, that we would expect like in next 4 years, happened in like 4 months, like Zoom, and as a result, we started seeing it just totally shook the ecosystem. It totally shocked the models. We had to constantly watch and see that we would see alarms going all over the place, because we were seeing things that the training data never saw. And as a result, a whole bunch of models had to be retrained. A whole bunch of models did stay pretty stable, but a whole bunch of models had to be retrained. There were some models where we actually project out, what volumes that we see on a normal basis, and so on and so forth, in a specific geography and all that. Some of those models just had to be sort of rebuilt so that we can kind of take in exogenous data and try to and use totally different methodologies, because we had never seen a shock of this magnitude. And then sometimes we had to actually build out models based on specific merchant categories. So when we see transactions, they're all segmented by categories. So there's groceries, there's jewelry. I mean, you name it, all the merchants get categorized into like hundreds of different merchant category codes, which are like much smaller portions. And sometimes we had to actually create models that were specific to a merchant category code, so that we could actually see what exactly we actually, how the model had to be retrained. So it did shock, and it actually kind of, it was a big learning curve, a big learning moment for us, because we have never seen something. It actually taught us exactly what we should be doing and what we should be putting in place, so that whenever we see a shock of this magnitude again, we would know what to do and what not to do, because we leveraged from this. But I'm sure, the impact to human life and all that, that was like extremely unfortunate. But I'm seeing that we're turning the corner, and nevertheless, for the data science community, it was a really big challenge. And I'm glad to see, a lot of really, really good solutions actually were made much more robust, and we come out of it, pretty strong.
That's very fascinating. I think the scale at which the magnitude of transactions that went online, it's probably a never before event for the world. and specifically for MasterCard. So we're glad that you're able to rebuild all those models with record speed, obviously, and be able to deploy them. And thank you for kind of trusting us with that part of, at least a part of that. And we're just getting started. I think the pace at which innovation has, behind every seemingly kind of difficult time is a necessity, is the mother of all innovation, is a way for greater creativity to be unleashed. So our expectation in general is that all our customers who have been just kicking tires or in the early phase of digital transformation are going to come out with huge programs that are digital first, AI first, and I think MasterCard's leading the pack there. So super excited for the transformation that will come out of as we come out of COVID. We'll have a world that is much more kind of ready for future kind of changes and black swan events. In terms of kind of how we talked about this in electricity and the context of AI, how, I mean, someone actually asked the question too, which was an interesting one. How do you kind of measure maturity of AI amongst organizations? And so it was a good topic, probably posed at me, but I might as well, since you're in the domain for so long. How have you kind of measured a KPI or a success criteria for increased maturity of deployment of machine learning and data in general?
So Shri, first of all, AI deploying or ingraining AI within a company is always going to be a journey. So, so with that said, there are like a few key things that that we keep in mind, while figuring out how successful we have been in deploying AI, or which is one of my remit, put AI into the fabric of MasterCard, as we like to sort of phrase it. Two things. Number one is that for any company, there are always like these 10 key processes that needs to actually run to keep a company going. That could be how the sales force is being managed. It could be how how the human resources, how you manage your people, and so on and so forth. It could be how you do your budgeting. I mean, these are things that has to take place for a company to survive, to be able to sort of continue to grow and to kind of keep holding onto the ground that they have captured. One way to figure out how successful you have been kind of in ingraining AI is to figure out how many of those 10 or whatever number of critical processes that are pivotal to keeping a company running, how many of them are powered by AI. Now, there is no way a company is not doing financial budgeting, for example. There's no way company is not doing capital allocation. There's no way company is figuring out how to optimize, the sales force or opportunities. There's no way they try to make their, network or whatever, whatever the core product superior, whatever the case might be. The goal should be that AI has to feed into each of those 11, or 10 or whatever number of processes that exist that keeps the company going. So that's one side of looking at it. The other dimension that we have is that we have figured out that, reporting to our CEO are the following 10 people or 7 people or whatever the case might be. And we then track it and says that, do we have use cases coming from each of those main arteries that lead to the CEO? And we track it from both from a functional perspective, and then also from an organizational perspective, that are we into every pillar that keeps keeps the MasterCard how stronger and stable. So we are kind of following it from both directions. It's a long journey, but AI should not be deployed in just the most common use cases. How can we, reduce fraud, or how can we how can we optimize, um, you know, call centers and so on and so forth. Those are all good use cases. But AI has to make it to every task, every artery of a company.
Well, that's a very well said. It's probably a very easy KPI to follow through as well mentally, from a common sense standpoint. If the CEO of your organization is being informed from every artery, as you rightfully put, every pillar, with data and AI, I think you're certainly infusing intelligence throughout the organization. The impact will be substantial, huge. That's a great metaphor. How is your partnerships with AI companies like us going? What are your thoughts for us? How can we make it better? How can technology companies specifically, which are AI software houses, how can we partner even closely with you, and what are the kind of and there I'm sure audiences who are peers who might want to kind of improve their organizations as well.
So, Shri, there is AI is moving, and AI is is a field that is evolving. And we can go out and we can download and a whole bunch of Python libraries and so on and so forth, and from the open source community, and some really good work is available out there. Cutting edge research is going on. But when it makes it into some of the functionality makes it into standard tool sets that we kind of subscribe to, such as H2.ai or other platforms that we use, we can be assured that the algorithms have been recoded and they've been made efficient and all that, because we don't have the bandwidth to be able to go out and kind of audit the code. We end up using the function and it's great, but is it truly the most efficient code? I mean, I was a graduate student as well, and I also wrote a lot of functions and so on and so forth. And was it the best functions that I wrote, or was it the most efficient? Not 100% sure. While I made my attempt, but it was not kind of reviewed, but I, went through all the, critical kind of QCing that, that a regular company goes through. So while it is great that we have access to a whole bunch of kind of, cutting edge research that makes it into Python, open source Python libraries and so on and so forth, there is a next level of assurance that we get using those functionality when it makes it into platforms such as yours. So I'm putting it in a very subtle way, but the pressure is on you all to sort of, to be out there looking at, critical kind of breakthroughs, critical functions that are, that making it into mainstream, and seeing how they can be incorporated into your platform, so that we can actually, rather than using that functionality in just proof of concepts and so on and so forth, we can actually use them into real application, deploy them with confidence that they are, providing the true benefit that we should be deriving. Yeah. I don't know if it answered the question, but
absolutely. Thank you for that. And I was just being very sincere about the question, mostly because I think we are huge kind of proponents of the kind of open source breeds freedom and innovation, right? Which means that H2O was one of the first open source platform out there long before TensorFlow started, or Torch. And we wanted to see the world where machine learning methods and algorithms, math is something that was handed to us over the centuries of innovation, doesn't get captured in some closed box that no one else can see and learn from and improve the world. And so for that, we actually kind of, as a result, there's incredible innovation across all academia, all of industry, all of peers and pioneers everywhere, innovators in math as well as engineering and physics. And I think what the gist of what we take is the pressure's on us providers of this software now for our customers to make sure they're battle tested, they're pressure tested, the algorithms are right or are good, or if they're not good, explain why. All of those, and I totally, I totally think one of course H2O is packed with that kind of mindset and engineering too, and the physicists and data scientists who are continuously curating the best of breed on Kaggle or at customers continuously. But more importantly, we have the strong trust and partnership of our customers like yourself, who are able to give us the feedback at every level, whether at our in a forum like this or in a meeting in the same room. Our partnership started not long ago in the same kind of vicinity of where you're sitting in person, to even our own customer advisory boards and the boards itself. So we're super blessed for the kind of partnership we've received from yourself and the Greater Mastercard team. So super thankful for that, grateful for that.
I mean, we are also very thankful for the partnership and all the benefits that we have derived using the tool. So with humility, I can tell you that we really did, use the tool, and we have benefited tremendously from what your organization has provided to us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the kind words. And this is just the beginning of a long AI journey. For those on the audience, we think of this as the earliest innings of AI, right? So, AI is promised, even during the Turing days, it has promised a lot. And we want to underwrite the usage of AI, build trust in AI, and make sure that the next 10, 20 years of technology innovation, both in software, hardware, and business, is driven with AI. So with that, I want to open up questions for Slido, but thank you so much, Rohit.
Thank you.
What?
Go ahead, Sri.
Thanks, Ian. Some really great questions here. Do you have an advice for those who want to become a data scientist in finance? That's a good one. Anything that catches your eye, Rohit?
So what skills do you, do you have any advice for those wanting to become a data scientist in finance? I think we have to start exposing ourselves to the tool sets out there, and sometimes to get the journey started, you have to kind of literally force fit and see if I can use a particular algorithm to see if we can come up with So let me paraphrase. Just the way internet actually made the cost of communication to zero. In the past, communication was a very expensive proposition, but internet just made and that changed everything. Likewise, AI has taken the cost of prediction to zero. In the past, prediction was a very expensive proposition. You had to hire, army of modelers, PhDs, and so on and so forth. So the question is that, can we take all the business challenges in finance, whatever we do, and can we rephrase those challenges that you face with into prediction problems? And can I create 5 predictions based on the outcome and then synthesize that to come up with a recommendation? And that exactly is what AI can help you do. You'll be able to, right now, most of the time, when you're working with spreadsheets and so on and so forth, you probably are relying on one prediction, because that is, and I'm just, super simplifying it, but it's unlikely that you're running like 8 different scenarios to figure out what exactly should be the final decision. And those are the things that will allow you to take the journey and learn the art of this, unpacking a problem into smaller kind of predictions, and then collecting those predictions to then weighting them to come up with a much more robust problem. The example that I use, and my apologies, I'm digressing, is that Google took a problem as complex as driving a car and converted into a prediction problem. They put cameras all over the car and said that by looking at the car and looking everything in and around the car, they can figure out if the car should move forward, backward, sideways, come to a stop, and so on and so forth. If Google can make driving a car into a prediction problem, I'm sure you can take whatever business challenges that you deal with and make it into a prediction problem and then come up with a solution. That's my advice to you.
Great one.
What skills do you need to be a leader in AI? I think a few things. Number one is that you need to, number one, figure out how you make AI something that is enabling everybody. And it should not be, a technology for either elite use cases or elite set of people that actually, benefit from AI. AI has to benefit everybody. And that is just having that mindset and also playing a role in kind of educating the organizations, the masses on what exactly AI is. It is probably the most misunderstood technology that has, that is right now that has surfaced in recent times. So I think the big responsibility also is on the leaders to figure out how they communicate, how they talk about technology, how they make people comfortable with this technology so that it is not seen as something that's going to take away jobs or something that people have to sit there and fear, but it's something that is going to enable and make life simpler for the employees, for the company, and the society in general will benefit from that. So those are, some of the things that you really need to be mindful of as you sit in a leadership position in AI.
Thanks, Rohit. There was a question that popped up from Amar, I think, why do AI projects failure is high and so on and so forth. I think the way to think about in our world is we are democratizing the cost of experiments. If the cost of experimentation goes down dramatically, right, then failure is not a bug, it's a feature. You learn from those failures so fast, so rapidly that you become really good at this and not worry about the cost of it, because the faster the learning rate of an organization is what we're really trying to go after. And once the key KPIs of data being how quickly can you wrap up good pipelines and deliver results to the businesses, and the way you said earlier, Rohit, has been that tight knit integration to the core decision-making function in the business, tight knit integration to the business for data science teams. These are kind of good pieces we see as the maturity of AI and data science in the companies grows. We have a level, we actually measure the level of maturity of AI at our customers, and most of it is focused on how early they are. In the early phase, that we see a lot of this project failures become the big picture topic items. But once they get past that and start seeing successes and then deploying it across the organization, and then truly becoming AI first, where feedback loops power decisions more than, and we create new data essentially, that's where we see even more place for growth. So I think the early people should, if they're in the earliest phase, they should persevere past that first phase of shock that happens to the system when they adopt AI.
Yeah, to add on what she said, a couple of things. Like when you talk about science, data science, science is about experimentation. And in any experiment that you do, there's either success or failure. So the thing is that I don't think that if we are in the business of data science, which I think the entire business community is, then AI failures should not be seen. First of all, there's nothing called AI failure. It is just you take on a data science, you take a problem, convert into a data science problem, you execute this experiment enabled by AI, and you reach a hypothesis that did it actually pan out or it didn't pan out? And if it does pan out, can we productionalize that to take it forward? So if we don't do that experiment, then we probably would be just sitting there guessing all day long that will it work or will it not work? We are better off just doing that experiment and finding the truth of it, does it work or doesn't work? And AI has suddenly become available that allows us to do these experiments very quickly and in a very cost-effective way. So I think it will enable us to do more experiments than what we have, what we have been able to do in the past. And the more experiments you do, you would definitely find a whole lot of success, but you'll find a whole lot of hypothesis that doesn't pan out. But I don't think we can look at it as failures, as if, kind of, in the way failures, are generally seen. Yeah.
Not trying is the failure, probably, right?
Yeah. I think, there could be failures in implementation, the deployment. Just building a very sophisticated AI model that works doesn't guarantee that it'll work really well successfully in a live application or a business case that needs to get deployed. There are a whole bunch of, softer things that come into play, exactly what the interface is, and so on and so forth. For example, there is a, all of us use, online retailers, and online retailers, as you're checking out, come up with a recommendation on people who bought this, also bought the following, X number of products, and so on and so forth. That's like a brilliant use case for AI, because they have history that every time you buy, the following products, you buy the following adjacent products. Now think about it, if that particular recommendation came to you, same set of recommendation, what they present on the screen while you're checking out, came to you via email, like 5 minutes after you've logged out, after you've checked out, do you think it will be effective? The answer is no. Will it be a failure of the AI model that came up with the recommendation? Answer is no, because it was exactly the same thing. But the deployment or the implementation of that recommendation has to be at the right moment. It has to be just before the person is actually checked out, and not via email. How many times do you actually open emails coming from your online retailer? Most of the time we don't. It goes into a junk folder, or we just delete it. So the whole set of things that actually play in figuring out if it's a success or not, it is not just the AI model, but a whole bunch of other things as well.
I think the whole, the overall context in which you're operating AI at MasterCard is breathtaking, and really such a joy to kind of hear your both the in-depth and at the highest level, the philosophy level, where should one think about, how should one think about maturing an organization and practice of AI worldwide. So we're super excited for your time today with us, Rohit, and answering questions for the audience, but in general, giving such clarity on how you're rolling out AI as a cultural transformation within your organization at MasterCard, but globally as others emulate what you're doing there. So it's super thrilled to have you today, and super thrilled to be on your journey. And the best is only getting started. So super excited for more great stories like this and having you on a future conversation with our audience. Thank you.
And thank you for having me. Thank you.